Story time of how I went to New Orleans and experienced the weirdest paranormal activity. Now, I'm aware New Orleans is a portal, and her energy is extremely thick. You either love New Orleans or dislike it. As for me, I love New Orleans. Their culture, the people, the food, the history, top tier. Now, I always have love for New Orleans, being that my dad and my mom is Haitian, and it's also said that Haiti and New Orleans are considered sisters, with all their related history, such as the food, the architecture, their spiritual practices, hoodoo, voodoo, the list goes on. Now, back in 2022, me and my husband decided to pay a visit in New Orleans again. Now, mind you, we've been to all the tourist sites, the French Quarter, the Garden District, the Lafayette Cemetery, Bourbon Street, the list goes on. Now, mind you, I haven't experienced too many paranormal or ghost activities as much because I had a spiritual protection around me. But however, on this particular day, while walking on Jackson Square, I had my first encounter. And that was in the St. Louis Cathedral. Yes, the church. So on that particular morning, me and my husband, we were strolling. We decided to say, hey, why not just pay a visit to inside the church? And I heard they had like a gift shop in there, etc. So I decided to take a walk inside. Now, before heading inside, my husband got a phone call and he just told me he'll meet me inside when he's done. Now, as soon as I stepped a foot in that church, tell me why I was immediately stopped. Not by a person, but by multiple heavy, I don't know if it was spirits or whatever it was, but it was a heavy ass energy in there. Mind you, I was able to move with my eyes. Like, I looked towards my right, I seen a statue, I seen saints and candles lit. And I looked towards my left and I saw the gift shop there. Now, every second felt more dense and got more heavy. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? Now, I'm a type of person like to feel the energy out and to basically dissect it and see what's going on. Is this energy good or bad? And being that I'm an intuitive person, I could feel, hear, smell, and understand energy quite well. And I was also able to detect that the energy that I was feeling was good and bad. The good side is that was my spiritual team with me. On the negative side, that was the energy that was stuck in that church. I don't know what happened in that church back in the 1800s, 1900s, but something is lingering in there. It was lots of spirits lingering in there. Because as soon as I walked in there, it just felt like all eyes was on me. And not in a good way. It was like, oh shit, she could see me. And everybody, it's like for some reason, everybody was walking around normal. They were shopping. They was going into church. They was going further in the church. I couldn't even step a foot inside the church. I couldn't go further. I couldn't get out of the lobby. My feet was not moving at all. I decided to go shift my way in towards the gift shop and trying to move myself, whatever, because it just got more heavier and heavier. I'm trying to make my way out the front door, but I don't know. For some reason, I made my way towards the gift shop. And it was also a part of me wanting to get souvenirs at the beginning. So I think that's another reason why my mind was just shifting my way towards the gift shop. Now, as I'm in there for only a few seconds. My husband walks in and he's looking around for me. I'm trying to wave to him to say, hey, I'm right here. But before he even got a chance to see me, he stopped at that front door. He made this face like, and then he turned around and walked out. That right there was intentional. Okay, yeah, he's feeling what I'm feeling. Now, as I'm in the gift shop, I'm looking around. I see the rosaries and a whole bunch of pictures of the saints and stuff like that. So again, one side of me was like, okay, I felt my spiritual team around me, my ancestors, my guides, my guardian angels. I already know I felt their presence around me and they were shielding me. The reason why I'm laughing because I know for a fact they're telling me to get the fuck out of there. Like, what are you doing in this gift shop, child? Get the fuck out. So they asked to swoop my ass out of there. Literally, I felt like I was floating. Like my feet was just floating out of there. Like I was out. Soon as I head out that door, my head felt like a pop. Like I felt like a pop of like you know how you're on a flight and then your ear starts to pop? I felt that type of like pop. That's how dense the fucking energy was in that church. Now I see my husband sitting on the bench and I walked next to him and I couldn't even fucking breathe. I couldn't even talk. So he's looking at me like, yo, babe, what happened? And I'm like, yo, give me a second. I'm saying Psalm 23 over and over and over in my head. I'm trying to ground myself and everything because I'm trying to figure out what's going on here or what the fuck I just experienced or happened. So I finally caught my breath and I finally felt grounded after saying my Psalms, because when you encounter something like that, the fastest thing you want to do is ground yourself. So I turned to my husband. I was like, yo, babe, as I walked in there, I don't know what I was experiencing. I felt something extremely dense and crazy. I felt like it was a whole bunch of spirits floating in the air all around me. I don't know what the fuck it was. And he looks at me and was like, yo, babe, I felt the same thing. I walked in there. I felt like a energy trying to swoop me up, and I got the fuck out of there. So I turned around and looked at him like, why didn't you come inside and get me? And he was like, oh, I thought you were further in the church. And I was not trying to go further in there because the energy felt like it was getting heavier and heavier. So I was like, okay, me and you experiencing the same thing, and everybody else walking in that shop and that in the shop and inside the church and taking pictures, walking around like it's nothing. And he was like, I don't know what's going on. He said, out of all the places that we experienced, I would never thought I would experience something like that in the church. And we both agreed to that. But as I walked out and I felt like myself again, I called my mom, being that she's Haitian, and, I'm trying to ask her what's the meaning behind that. And she said it could be a lot of things. She said what I experienced personally, it was the fact true. Like, it was a lot of spirits there, like lingering spirits. And it was also my spirit team. And it's a good thing that I got out. And she said also, when you entering places like that, especially late 1800s, late 19, very historical places, it's always good to leave offerings as well, just to pay the respect to the spirits that's there. But it's a whole nother story with that. But anyway, that was my paranormal, scary, ghost, whatever experience that I experienced in New Orleans. But anyway, I never heard anyone experience something like that in the cathedral church before. So let me know if you experienced something like that before in New Orleans.
I grew up in a haunted house, so every day until Halloween, I'm telling a different story that happened to me while living there. This is the fourth one, I believe. I was around 14 or 15 at the time of this story, and my mom was with me when this one happened. We were wrapping Christmas presents, and downstairs we had like a huge area that had an area rug on it, but then that rug was so huge it had another like 8x10 rug on top of that. So I had ran back upstairs to get more gifts and tape or something like that, and then when I got back downstairs, my mom was like, what'd you do with the scissors? I was like, I left them down here. I don't know what you're talking about. So she's like, well, I set them down here and now they're gone. And so I was like, well, what's this? There's a lump under the carpet. What's that? Now, we were in the center of this huge 8x10 rug. And like I said, it was on top of another massive rug, right? So I just kind of looked at her and I was like, do you think it's the scissors? And she's like, there's no way the scissors could be underneath this. And I said, well, it's got to be something, like, let's move the rugs and see what it is. So we had to scoot the coffee table over, move the couch back, and roll up not one rug, but two. And in the center of the floor were the scissors. So the scissors that she had just been using, she set down, went back to get another present, went back to get the scissors again, and now they were under two carpets, well, two rugs. And that was just the beginning of her moving things. One time my watch disappeared, couldn't find my watch anywhere. And do you remember those old CD cases that were like a canvas material and then they had the hard plastic in it? Well, one day I had like knocked that CD case over and noticed like a knot underneath it. So I had to take all the CDs out, remove the plastic case, and in the bottom of that was my watch. So it eventually got to the point that when something went missing, we knew she had taken it at that point because we had looked everywhere else. So we would just ask her, can you please give it back? And then it would just randomly show up somewhere.
Okay, as promised, I have more ghost stories. If you have not heard the previous ones, I live in a 200-year-old house in New Orleans. It's in the French Quarter. It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's everything that you would expect a haunted house to look like in the French Quarter. So I have told a couple of other stories, and this is one that I want to tell from a couple of weeks ago. That was actually, I wasn't home when it happened. My boyfriend was. I will set the stage a little bit. This happened back in the, well, it happened all over the house, but he was sitting in the back in the office area. I'm going to insert a video right now so you can see what that looks like. It's right next to the bedroom. Okay, so this is the walk down the hallway. First, I will take you into the bedroom, the creepy bedroom if you haven't seen it. Sorry, my laundry's all piled right here. A little bit, this is like where we put all of our shit because I don't know what to do with this scary back bedroom. And then you go around the corner, there's Lena. You go around the corner, and then this is the back office. It's obviously not fixed up or decorated yet either, but this goes to the outside right here. So, and then remember this for later. I'm going to turn around and show you what it looks like going down to the end of the hall here. So this happened about 3 weeks ago. Mina and I were at the dog park, and it was maybe 4:35, like kind of right before dusk, let's say. And he was working in the back office, and he said that, and I'll try to recount this as good as I can. It's his story, like I said. He was sitting in the back, 20 minutes or so. He is sitting there feeling like somebody is watching him. And I think we've all had that feeling before, and it's like a very, very weird feeling. But he was sitting there, and he just really couldn't shake that feeling that there was like a heaviness or somebody was watching him. And I've gotten that feeling a lot in the back of the house, but he said this was really, really intense. And so he kept trying to shake it, kept trying to shake it. It was getting more and more and more intense. He gets up to kind of like shake it off a little bit, comes back to the office, and he said that for the next like several minutes, he was sitting there and the feeling of like uneasiness was just growing and growing and growing. It was almost like a sense of dread. And he said he really felt like somebody was just standing, staring at him. And it was really, really odd. He said he'd almost never felt a feeling quite like that before, where somebody was not in the room with him, and it was just like this intense uneasiness. I'm gonna try to retell this like he told it. He gets up because the feeling of uneasiness is so uncomfortable. He goes and he's walking down the hallway, and I will show you what his view is right here. So he's like going to walk down the hallway, and he sees a shadow at the end of the hallway. And he said that like he knew logically that there was nobody in the house with him, but there was something at the end of the hallway. There was like just a shadow, and it stopped him in his tracks. And then he saw a flash of light that was so bright that it looked like fucking lightning. Like it looked like lightning, big flash, almost even like a camera had taken a picture. It startled him so much that he said he screamed and kind of like jumped. And so about, let's say 30 minutes later, I come home from the dog park. He's standing in the living room. He's like pacing around, and he's totally pale. And I'm like, what the fuck happened? And he explains everything to me and says that like, I don't know what this was, but there was like electricity. There was a flash of light. I really thought that it was lightning. It was really intense. Like it kind of filled up the whole room, and it like made him feel weird. This was actually the incident that caused me to, I bought some cameras, and I have set them up in the house. They've been running for only a couple of days now, and I am going to go back through them in the next couple of days and see if there's anything in there in the hallway, because I don't know what that is, right? And if anybody has ever heard a story like that where there was like a flash of electricity, I would love to know what you think about that, because what the fuck. Anyways, I'm gonna go through that camera footage though.
Read a skinwalker story, and I have been waiting all day to make this video. And if you're wondering why I'm looking a little rough, it's because I just worked 10 hours. You can still see the indentation of my glasses. So please forgive me for looking like this right now. My husband and I occasionally take our Jeep into the sand-washed Mesa trails. We decided to pack some water and make a day of it. Towards the end of the trip, we heard a weird, open mouth whistle like someone just learning to whistle. I made a joke, not joke, that what if it was a skinwalker? My husband replied with, "That's okay, our Jeep can outrun it." That was the end of the conversation. We then noticed we were heading a little off track. Our navigation was pretty inaccurate, and we realized we were fairly close to the Navajo land. We went home, and my husband started researching GPS apps. A little while later, he found one and said we should go out for a small rip to test it out. Boy, was that a mistake. It was around 8:15 p.m. The sun was just setting, and we had been out for about an hour and a half by this point. We were on a trail heading back home when my husband braked abruptly and asked, "What was that?" I asked what he was talking about, and he said, "Out there by the dip, something ran across the trail and then back again." I laughed and asked if he was screwing with me, but he continued, "I swear I'm not. It was on 2 legs, but it was fucking fast. Unbelievably fast." I hadn't seen a thing, and we proceeded as normal. I rolled up my window thinking it may be an animal, and we got got closer. We were going about 25 miles per hour so that he didn't hit anything if something jumped out. He said, right there, this is where I saw it. It was another trail that crossed ours, and as we crossed, we saw two young girls with dark hair, one a bit taller than the other, standing there watching us to the right. We chuckled as we passed, and my husband said, see, I wasn't fucking with you. We both fell silent for a split second. It didn't really sit well with us. There were two young girls, and for all intents and purposes, it was dark. The sun had just set. Why were they out there alone? My husband looked through the driver's side mirror after we passed and yelled, oh my god, they're gaining on us. They're fucking gaining on us. I couldn't understand what I had just heard or why he would have said that. I looked through the passenger side mirror and I saw nothing. I looked at him with a what the fuck look on my face, and then I saw how serious he was and how he just kept repeating, they're gaining on us. I twisted my body to look through the back window and I distinctly saw the two black figures, one a bit taller than the other, less than 50 feet away and closing. Now, when we passed the cross trail, they were about 30 feet back, so for them to get from there to literally right behind us in the matter of seconds is impossible. My husband accelerated 30, 35, still gaining, 40, 45, still gaining. At this point, my husband just stomped on it and our Jeep was kicking up such an insane amount of sand that we lost visual. We were afraid to go home, afraid that they would follow us. We drove around for about an hour in almost silence, trying to process what we had just seen. Why were two young girls out there alone? How did they get behind us so quickly? How were they gaining on us? And most importantly, what the hell just happened? We drove home still shaken and started getting ready for bed. Now, our bedtime ritual for falling asleep is putting something on the TV and just dozing off. To the right of our bed, we had a sliding glass patio door. It's what I face when I fall asleep. I remember dozing off, then I heard a sound and my eyes shot open. I was seeing two shadows crossing the door. I didn't mention anything at the time because I was honestly unsure. If one, my mind was playing with me, or two, I was asleep. Not to mention the fact that if I had been asleep, I'd feel silly. So I only brought it up to my husband when I called him on my lunch break. He knew exactly what I was talking about with the shadows because he had seen them too. This happened almost 3 weeks ago. Since then, we've woken up once to our front door unlocked, one specific kitchen cupboard open almost every other morning, sounds, footsteps, etc. Just the image of like the shadows gaining on them while they're in a car. Terrified. What do you guys think?
Spooky story time. A follower named Roy sent me this story and we're gonna call it The App. This is gonna be a multiple part series because he's had some shit happen. Roy has always believed in the paranormal. It has always kind of intrigued him. So one day he is just chilling, living his best life. He downloads this ghost app. It's kind of like a spirit box Ouija board type of app, and he messes with it and he's like, he just leaves it there on his phone. No biggie, but this is going to be important later on. Roy says that in 2015, he started working for a creamery in San Bernardino, California, where he worked there for about 5 years. He did get a lead position a year into his employment, so he often had to train all kinds of people and stuff like that. His company ends up hiring a man named Paul, and Roy says that because of his past, where he's from, he can tell that this guy is down. He has tattoos and you know the vibes. They often hung out and did what guys do, I don't know. And at the time, Roy didn't have a vehicle, so Paul would give him rides home. Everything was going smooth, their friendship was going fine, until one day things take a turn. Paul tells Roy that he is a witch or a warlock and comes from a family of well-known witches. Paul also told Roy that he had actually already worked for this company before in the 90s and would often cast spells to people that he didn't like and just wreak havoc. Eventually, Paul ended up getting fired at the time, and he told Roy that he was waiting for his moment to come back and finish what he started. Roy was freaked out and low-key concerned because they had gotten really close and he didn't want to just stop talking to this guy because what if he did something to him? As Paul's employment progressed, Roy started noticing that coworkers were getting sick out of nowhere and having so many personal issues and just getting hurt all the time, and he had a feeling that Paul had something to do with it. One day they're working and Paul tells Roy, "Do you want to see something?" Before he could answer, he sees a figure standing directly behind Paul, exact same height, and it just kind of like peeks over his shoulder. Like, Paul says that the only way that he can describe it is a figure, like a man's body shape, but all staticky and like distorted, kind of like an old TV. Roy remembers getting scared and then suddenly just snaps out of it. 3 hours had passed and they were in a completely different room. He was holding a wrench. He's telling Paul, I'm gonna hurt you. Roy starts freaking out and Paul looks at him like, what are you talking about? You didn't even say anything. That night, Paul still took Roy home as usual. And Roy honestly just wants to act normal because he's honestly scared of Paul. And Paul tells him, hey, do you want to see something? Immediately, Roy's heart just starts pounding like, oh, hell no, I know something's gonna happen. And sure enough, he starts hearing 3 loud bangs, like coming from his side of the vehicle. He looks, nobody's there. At this point, it's pouring rain. Paul's laughing and tells Roy, look. Guy riding a bike towards them on the sidewalk wearing a hoodie. He looks up, looks at Roy, and it's that same figure, that face, the staticky face, like, ah! Instantly, Roy's like, hell no, like, I'm done, like, I gotta go. I'm gonna end it here, go to part 2.
So I think it's time to tell you guys about some creepy stuff that's been going on because something really scary just happened this week, and maybe you can give me a word of advice or help me out or something. So I'll start off by saying that we moved to this house a couple years ago, and ever since we've lived here, there's been stuff that I can't explain that's been happening. So much so that I've gotten up and checked this whole entire house in the middle of the night, from hearing footsteps, doors shutting, lights turning off. My kids have seen men walking around. We've set up security systems. So I decided to ask my community members if they knew the history about this place, how I could find out if anything happened here, thinking that nobody would respond to this. So many people in my community had said I wouldn't live in that area. I lived in that area, I had to move. A lot of history of the new areas being built on burial grounds. There's been massacres there. Another freaky thing is I've been having dreams lately and then seeing them the next day, which has kind of always happened since I was little, but just rarely. Recently, it's been quite often. And I'm not saying that I'm some kind of prophet or psychic or anything like that. I think the Holy Spirit's just maybe giving me awareness of things. I'm not really sure yet. So here's what happened, and you're not going to believe the ending to this. I'm dreaming, and I'm dreaming that I'm wearing this shirt, and my 3-year-old is sleeping in the loft, and I hear him screaming really bad. I'm thinking, okay, he's either having a nightmare or he's being attacked. I get up really fast and I have tunnel vision like you do sometimes if you stand up too fast. I'm diabetic, so I took my insulin pump in my dream and I clipped it on my shirt like this so I could run faster to go get him. And I run down the hall looking at him, and there's this black spot hovering over his stomach, and he's screaming, no, 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 no. And I woke up, but before I opened my eyes, I heard running down the hallway really fast. Boom, 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 boom. And then it goes across the hallway in front of my bed and to the corner of my bed. And when I opened my eyes, slightly, I saw what I thought looked like the back of my 3-year-old's head standing there. And I quickly thought, oh, the reason that I'm dreaming this is because this is actually happening. He's having a nightmare. And so I started to lift my covers up so he could get in bed with me. And as I fully opened my eyes, nothing's there. Silence. This is not the weird part. This is not the spooky part. Nothing's there. This is a common thing that's been happening in this house. Here, running down my hallway really fast. Boom, 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 boom. Over to the side of my bed, and then silence. Nobody's there. I have checked under the bed. I'll go check on the kids. They're dead asleep. No one's here. No one, the security didn't beep, nothing like that. I thought, okay, maybe I just thought I saw him there. I have to try to go to sleep, even though my heart's pounding, I'm sweating because this is like a scary situation. I just got to pray and go to sleep because I regret it every morning when I don't get sleep over this stuff. And then I heard my 3-year-old, who actually was sleeping in the loft, screaming, Mama, Mama. And I woke up, and I'm wearing this shirt. I woke up really fast. I had tunnel vision because I woke up fast. I put my insulin pump on my shirt so I could run faster. And as this is happening, I'm like, this is freaky because this is exactly how my dream was. This is kind of freaking me out. I go into the loft. He's awake. And I was like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And Mom, I had a horrible dream. And I was like, oh, it's okay. You know, you're safe. I'm into my room. Sleep. This is where it gets crazy. We wake up the next morning, he said, Mama, you put me in your bed last night. And I said, yeah, you had a scary dream. And he said, oh yeah, I had a really, really scary dream. And I said, well, what was it about? Y'all are not gonna believe what he said. I dreamed about a bad guy who looked like me. My heart skipped a beat. Like, oh, really? And he said, yeah, there were bad guys that looked like all you guys, all of our family. He said, and the bad guy was attacking me. What? Now, I know it sounds crazy and bizarre. If you want to know more stories about what's been going on around here and what the community members said, let me know and I'll make another story, but let me know what you think all this means. Freaky, right? What do I need to do about this?
Okay, creepy story time. This is a story about a guy named Danny who decides to rent a cabin in the Appalachian Mountains. And if you know anything about the Appalachian Mountains, you know where this is going. So Danny finds a cabin online. It's cheap, but it's described as remote and super peaceful, and that's exactly what he wanted. So obviously he makes his trip to the mountains, and if you've been to the mountains, you know that the roads they can be really scary. They're super narrow. You're going up, like for miles and miles. You can't see around a lot of the turns because, you know, the trees and just the edge of the mountain and it being so winding. It was a creepy ride, he said, but when he got there, the cabin was what was described. It was a nice little cabin right on the edge of the ridge. And it looked kind of weathered, but still it was like nice and cozy. It had like a single bedroom, a wood burning stove, and the porch looked right over the valley. So it was everything he wanted, and he was happy with it. Now the first night was super peaceful. He said he even slept with the window open because the mountain breeze just felt really nice. You could hear the crickets and stuff in the woods. It was super peaceful. But the second night is where things started to get really weird. So first he heard slow but deliberate footsteps on the porch, which is like right outside the window, and that startled him. And then he hears tapping on the window, and that really startled him. So he grabs his phone and he checks the time, and it's exactly 3:12 a.m. So he's really creeped out, but obviously he's gonna go see what the tapping is, because don't they always? So there's like a little part in the curtain where he can like kind of peek through a little bit. So he peeks out there and he sees a tall, like abnormally thin figure. And so he opens the curtains completely. Why, I don't know. But he opens the curtains and he sees it's a woman, but like she looks not right. She's super thin, pale, barefoot. She's wearing like a nightgown, and she has long dark hair that covers part of her face, kind of like my creepy doll back there. And he asked her, like, do you need help? He said she didn't say anything. She just stood there and like her head was like tilted slightly. Oh, he also did say that her eyes were super dark and empty, so that's creepy. But then he was like, are you lost? Like he's trying to get her to answer and she's not saying anything. And then all of a sudden she just kind of like smiles just a little bit. And she's like, let me in. This really freaked him out, and then her smile got way wider, like abnormally wide, and he went to grab a flashlight. So he rushes to grab a flashlight, and when he turns to shine it towards her, she's gone. So the next morning he just gets up and he hikes down the mountain like a mile, and there's like this little mountain general store, and the clerk in there looks at him and he's like, you look like shit. And he's like, yeah, I didn't sleep very well last night. There was a weird woman that showed up to my cabin, and she was super pale with dark hair, and, you know, he described her or whatever. And the clerk was like, where are you staying? And he was like, the cabin is called Black Hollow Cabin. 'Cause, you know, they name all their cabins and stuff. And he was like, that's where you're staying? And Danny was like, yeah, why? And he was like, do you know who that is? Is someone like missing or something? And the clerk was like, people have been seeing that woman for about 50 years. And the people that see her tend to go missing. So Danny was like, what am I supposed to do? He said, do not talk to her and absolutely do not let her in. So that night, Danny is freaked out, and so he has all the lights on, and he's got all the windows and doors completely locked, and he just sits on the couch all night with his hunting utensil in his lap. Sorry, I don't know what I can say on here. And 3:12 a.m., here come the footsteps on the porch, and then here come the taps. But this time, she says his name. He hears Danny. So Danny just ignores her like he's told, and she says, Danny, let me in. And he just keeps ignoring her literally all night long. And then he hears the footsteps leave the porch. So the next morning, he packs his stuff and he leaves, but he stops by that store, and all the clerk says to him is, she'll find someone else.
Snuggle up, besties, because I have a spooky, scary story for you. Me and Nala want to tell you about this time when I was in high school, and apparently a little ghost girl haunted the Performing Arts Center. And one of my old teachers, she really did not believe in an afterlife or anything like that, did not believe in ghosts, said that she had encountered this girl once and had heard her running in the rafters, and that one of the students, when performing at the talent show, had a photo of them taken where you could see this little girl in the background, but that photo somehow mysteriously disappeared. And she told me this in confidence, and I believe her, to be honest, because she gains nothing from lying to me about this. Maybe she wanted to freak me out, maybe not, but whatever. It did freak me out. It worked. I go home. I'm thinking about this, and there's a cemetery not too far from where my house was at the time, and I'm on the second floor, upstairs in my bedroom. Nala's already asleep. And I'm on Facebook, because that's what we used back then when it was cool and not just spewing echo chambers of political nonsense. And I was on Facebook and I was saying hey, has anybody had any experiences in the Performing Arts Center and seen this little ghost girl, blah, 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 blah. And I had some friends message, and they were commenting, and theater kids telling me about their experience. And as I'm reading this, one of my friends messages and says, hey, so strange, but as I was talking about this, the power went out on the second floor of my house. And this friend lives across town, right? We are not in the same neighborhood. And as I read that, the power went out. Naturally, I freak out. I run into my mom's room, and it's late. It's probably 10 o'clock. My mom is asleep. I scream, I jump in her bed, and I'm like, oh my God, what? The power's out, the power's out. Turns out the power only went out on the second floor of my house. Everything else was fine. My stepdad was in the basement, and he didn't even realize why I was screaming. First floor, everything was fine. Just the second floor of my house, the power went out. Later, come to find out, apparently the ghost girl might have been, the lore was that she might have been this disabled child who was the daughter of this couple who lived in the area where our school was built. It used to be part of this farming neighborhood. And the story goes that one day the girl fell out of the second story of her home. And a lot of people think that the parents pushed her because they couldn't deal with a child with a disability. And so I thought it was really weird that then the power went out just on the second floor of my house while I was talking about Shorty. What do you guys think? Nala's unamused.
This story is definitely one of the creepiest ones I've read since starting Spooky Scary Storytime. It's about this girl and her twin sister and how they've always shared this connection, which changed after her sister got what she thinks is a haunted item from an estate sale. So the girl who emailed me, we're going to call her Amy, did not want her real name to be used, and her identical twin sister is named as Becky. Becky is obviously not her real name. She didn't want hers to be used either for privacy reasons. I get it. But these girls are 26 now. They grew up somewhere in Michigan with a single mother. Dad was never really in the picture, and they moved around a lot, hopped around apartment to apartment. Their mom was always working, so they were each other's best friends growing up. And then she said that they had the twin bond, which I am not a twin, I don't know, but I've heard it's a real thing. She said basically since they were small, they could finish each other's sentences. They always knew what the other one was feeling or thinking. Twins, weigh in on this one. Maybe you guys can shed some light on if this is a real thing or not. And because they changed schools and neighborhoods so often, they really, really grew to rely on each other, and they were really each other's best friend. When the girls were 23, their mother sadly passed away from cancer, and they moved in with their grandmother, who lived in a small 2-bed, 1-bath house not far from where they were living with their mother. Their grandmother lives till they're 25, so last year she passes away. Up till their grandmother passed away, they were sharing a bedroom. When their grandmother passed away, they inherited the house, and Amy, who emailed me, moves into her grandmother's bedroom. So now they have their own bedrooms for the first time in their life. And they are excited about it. She said, although they were still best friends, still hung out, did everything together, had the same friends, they obviously weren't the same person. Like, they had their own interests. For example, Becky, Amy's twin, was really into like Pilates. She was very active, very athletic. And then Amy was more into like art and music and just books and a quieter life. She said of the two of them, Becky was like the more outgoing. After their grandmother passed away, they also inherit like a little bit of money, like not enough to be life-changing or anything. Both of them are actually still working at the same job as baristas, but it's enough for them to splurge on some things that they wanted and also redecorate the house. And they were so ecstatic to do this because they had never had like a place of their own, really. Like, they never had money, and they were keeping the house in both of their names. So they were like, you know what, we're going to spend some of this money to make the house like comfortable and kind of just like cute, like we've always wanted. So they sell some of their grandmother's things, and they make all this space in the house for like the new things they're going to bring in. They have all these like vision boards of what they want the house to look like, but they obviously have to do it in a smart way because they don't have that much money to burn. So they had grown up thrifting, not because out of like a hobby, but because their mom never had money. So they were always like wearing hand-me-downs. They were always having like mismatched used furniture, but they're like, we can do this in a smart way. Like, we know where to look. And Amy described their vision for the house as like bold maximalist, you know, like bright colors, bold patterns, whatever. They go to a bunch of thrift stores in their town. They find some pieces that fit. Becky's like, we should also check estate sales. And Amy's like, bet. They get online. They find a website that lists all the estate sales in their areas, and they plan this whole weekend of going to estate sales. The first two they go to, they find a chair and a mirror, but that's it. But they're really excited for the third estate sale, which is at this huge estate mansion. They pull up. There's already a ton of cars, a ton of people. Apparently it was like a predominant family. The last person in that family had passed away, and it was like all of their leftover things. So they walk in and look around. It's all this really nice solid wood furniture, a lot of really expensive art, and they look at each other. They're like, there's no way we're going to be able to afford this. There's one lady running the show. She's like running around frantic, talking to all the people there, looking at everything. They find this set of like bright yellow couches that they wanted, and they ask the lady, and she tells them it's like $12,000. So they're like, yeah, no. They were walking around for a little bit. Amy said what really stood out to her about all of the art was that it was very like evil looking. There were a lot of images of what appeared to be like demons coming up from the earth, and like children with grimaces on their faces, and then like saints in cloaks. She said just like not a good vibe for the art. So they can't afford anything anyway. She tells Becky like, hey, we should leave. Becky's like, all right, well, let me just like look in the bedroom real quick. I just want to see if there's anything like little, like maybe we can find something like cool, like a little trinket or something. So she walks in one of the bedrooms, and there's like a jewelry box, and with all the contents laid out. They're looking over the jewelry. It's all very gaudy, like neither of their styles. And there's a little sign that says inquire for pricing on individual pieces. So Becky's eyes come across this little Victorian brooch. This is not the exact brooch, but this is the picture that Amy sent me and said it looked like this. It was a black silhouette with a white woman in the foreground. She said the one Becky found, though, seemed to be different in that the woman seemed to be like grimacing. Becky picks it up and shows Amy, and she's like, oh my God, I have to have this. And Amy rolls her eyes. She's like, you're not going to be able to afford it. And Becky's like, I'm just going to ask how much it is. She brings it downstairs. She shows the lady running the show, who's still like frantically running around talking to all the buyers. And she's like, hey, how much is this? I found it upstairs by the jewelry. And the lady like can't be bothered. She's like, just take it. So Becky's like, bet. She like doesn't think twice. She's like, it's mine. And Amy's like, I can't believe you just got that for free. And she's like, yeah, like I manifested it. So they leave. Amy's driving home. Becky's looking at the brooch. She's like admiring it. She's trying to look up if it's worth anything. And she's just like, I feel drawn to it. Like I feel like it was meant for me. Amy said she didn't think it was that cool, and she like did not understand her excitement. They get home, whatever. Amy's boyfriend comes over that night. Okay, so he's sleeping in her bed with her. They go to sleep. She has a nightmare while she's sleeping about the brooch. She said she was looking at it on Amy's dresser, and she picked it up, and the woman in the brooch turned to look at her and scowled at her. And then she started talking, but she said she can't remember what she said in the dream, but she remembers it was a warning. So she said she thought she woke up from this dream. She sits up in bed. She wakes up her boyfriend, and her boyfriend turns over, but his face is the woman's face. And then she really woke up. So she had like a dream within a dream. She's obviously unsettled by this nightmare. So she tries to fall back asleep, but she said when she closed her eyes, she just saw all the demons and like the grimacing children from the painting she saw at the estate sale. So she doesn't really sleep well that night. She wakes up. Becky's already awake because she's going into a shift at work. She's dressed, and she has attached the brooch to like a strap on the purse that she always wore. She bounces out the door. She's like, I'll see you after work, and she leaves. Amy's out that day, but she goes out to run errands and like hang out with her boyfriend. She's sitting on the couch at her boyfriend's house when she gets a text from her friend, and her friend says, hey, are you too good for me now? LOL. Amy texts her back, and she just sends her like a question mark. And her friend's like, oh yeah, I said hey to you at the park and you ignored me. Amy's like, I wasn't at the park. And her friend texts her back, and she's like, oh, it must have been Becky. But Becky's supposed to be at work. So Amy texts Becky, and she's like, hey, did you get cut early? And Amy texts her back after like 20 minutes, and she's like, no, I'm still here. It's so slow. Amy said it was pretty common for them to be mistaken in public for each other because they were identical. So Amy's just like, okay, weird. Like must have been somebody else who looked like us. She doesn't think too much into it. That night though, she has the same dream about the woman with the brooch, and this time she has a warning that Amy actually remembers. It's the same thing. She's looking at Becky's dresser. She sees the brooch. The woman in the the brooch turns to look at her and says, "You have what's mine, give it back." And again, she wakes up from this dream and she's just like, what is going on? So the next day she tells Becky, like, your brooch is giving me nightmares. I don't know why it creeps me out, but like I have these dreams about it. Becky jokes with her. She's like, oh, you're just jealous that I have it and you didn't get it. And Amy's like, no, I honestly don't even really like it. Like, I just don't like it. It's creepy. And Becky gives her this little lecture, half joking, about how Amy's the one that likes art. She should appreciate different art and jewelry and styles from different decades. Becky doesn't get rid of the brooch. Weeks go on. She continues having this dream. And then one night she wakes up to Bella, which is their dog, which they share, and Bella is howling. She said although they shared Bella, Bella was more Becky's dog. She just liked her more. She always slept with her. But that night, Bella comes running out of Becky's room and she jumps in the bed with Amy and her boyfriend. She was shaking and whimpering, and she really had never displayed any type of anxiety before. So Amy did her best to calm her down and she goes back to sleep. After that night, Bella continued sleeping with Amy, like refused to go near Becky, and Becky couldn't figure out what was wrong and her feelings were kind of hurt by it. She's like, she's my dog. Things got creepier when this guy that Becky had been seeing had one of her sweatshirts that she left at his house, and he texted them in a group chat and was like, hey, I'm going to bring over Becky's sweater. Both of the girls were out, so they text him like, hey, we're not home, just leave it at the doorstep. Both of the girls were working at the coffee shop when he texted them this. He's like, okay, cool, I'll just leave it on the doorstep. Later that night, Becky gets off work. She texts her boyfriend. He's like, I thought you were mad at me. And she's like, why would I be mad at you? And he's like, when I saw you earlier, you seemed upset. She's like, what are you talking about? So she calls him, and Amy said the phone call was in front of her, like he was on speakerphone, so she heard it. But basically he said that when he came over to their house to drop off the sweater, Becky answered the door and she took the sweater from him, but she didn't say anything to him. Apparently he was like, oh, you're off work early, like let's hang. And she just like ignored him, like was so cold, took the sweater and went inside. Becky's like, I've been at work all day. And he's like, cool, was it Amy? And she's like, no, she's been at work all day with me. So they get home and the sweater is on the couch. So they're like, what the F is going on? Because nobody else lived there. He did not have a key to their place. They ruled out the fact that he was like playing some elaborate joke on them. The whole thing was really rubbed them the wrong way. They go out that night and they buy some Ring cameras. Not long after that happens, Becky's at work one day. Amy's at the house by herself. She's sleeping in because she said sometimes they work together, but usually Becky worked in the mornings and Amy worked at night. She's in her bed with the dog, scrolling on her phone. She had just woken up, and she said she saw Becky walk past her door, which was like half cracked open, into the bathroom. This was like 2 hours after Becky was supposed to leave for work. So she calls her. She's like, Becky, why are you here? Becky doesn't say anything. So she gets up, she walks out of the hall, and she said directly to the right of her bedroom door was the bathroom. She looks in the bathroom and Becky's not in there. She says 100% she saw Becky walk past the door. It wasn't like a shadow, it was Becky. She's obviously freaked out. She calls Becky. Becky's at work, so she doesn't answer. She texts her back. She's like, what's up? I'm at work. You know this. Amy's like, did you come home? And Becky's like, no, I'm at work. I've been here for like 2 hours. So she's too freaked out. She leaves. She goes to her boyfriend's house. She comes home later that night when Becky's also home. Becky's out in the living room watching TV. Amy is sitting on the floor in her bedroom, like with the mirror, doing her makeup, and she's on FaceTime with one of her friends. She's telling her about this experience she had. Her friend cuts her off at one point and she goes, oh, hey, Becky. Amy looks in the phone in the little FaceTime window and she sees Becky standing behind her. So she turns around and nobody's there. And her friend's like, rude, she could have said hi. And she's like, she wasn't there. So Amy runs out in the living room and Becky is still sitting on the couch watching TV. She's like, were you just in my room? And Becky's like, no, I've been watching the show. She said this continues to happen. She continues seeing Becky where she's not. She has no idea what's going on. And it's been 8 months since this has started happening. The girls say they have researched this to the end of the earth and they cannot find anything. Amy said she's convinced it was the brooch because it started when the brooch was brought in the house. She convinced Becky to stop wearing the brooch. She still has it. She said she doesn't know what to do with it, but she doesn't wear it anymore. She said she sent me this story because she wants to know if anyone's had a similar experience, and if so, what should she do? What should they do? She said also now her and Becky are arguing all the time. Becky actually doesn't know that she sent me this story, which is another reason she wanted their names changed. Becky's whole personality has just gotten this really dark, heavy, like attitude. She also said that she will continue giving me updates about this story. So this will be just like an ongoing one. In February, I'm doing a spooky, scary dating story time series. So if you have a creepy ex-stalker, boyfriend, first date story, send those to me. And I'll keep adding these stories to this playlist.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Yeah, so let me tell you guys about my first paranormal experience, which happened in boarding school. So I went to an all-girls boarding school when I was in high school. It went from 7 to 12, but I was only there for my high school terms. And that school was built in like the 1800s. Okay, I'm pretty sure it was built on like military grounds. There was rumors of girls who died on that campus before, and there was one confirmed death because we had a monument dedicated to the death. But that happened in like the 1800s. But this is just to give you a feel. Like the school was like pretty spooky. Like we literally had a graveyard that was in the center of campus. Okay, so when I'm talking about old spirits and odd energy, that's the place to be. So my first encounter with something paranormal happened like in sophomore year. So I've always had like spooky dreams and whatnot, but this was my first like actual experience where I felt something was really, really off. So sophomore year, I was rooming with my friend. Let's call her Larry. She knows who she is. So me and Larry were rooming with one another, and Larry's the type where she's real punctual. She don't play about her sleep. Okay, so Larry always goes to sleep around like 12 a.m. Okay, on a weekday. I, on the other hand, I was a big procrastinator. So you would catch me when I sleep around like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Okay, I had no business going to sleep around that time, but just know I was up. So per usual, Larry lays her head down. Larry's about to go to sleep. It's 12. It's around that time. And when Larry closes her eyes, she don't respond to nobody. Even if she just closed her eyes 2 seconds ago, she would not respond because she's trying to get in that mode. Okay, so we just knew not to disturb Larry, and we knew that if we did disturb Larry, she wasn't going to answer you. Okay, so me on the other hand, I'm still finishing up some work. Finally, I finished around like 12:10, 12:20. It's closer to 12:30. I feel like I vaguely remember this, but let me show y'all our room layout so y'all can start knowing where I start feeling things start to get a little weird. Okay, y'all, so this is the entrance. This is Larry's bed. These are our desks, and that's my bed. I was by the windows, but once you come in, obviously you see my bed straight here. So Larry knocked out. I'm over here, finishing my homework, and then my eyes just start slowly trailing to the corner. Now, y'all see this figure? That's what it felt like. And let me explain. So, the entrance, we had the closet 1 and closet 2. Now, Larry left me the closet that was closest to the entrance. So every time the door swung, okay, you know, swing was complicated. Of course, you got the cuter closet where there's more space to breathe. But in this corner, right, I just feel something dark watching me. I just had this, like, feeling that there was this presence that was watching me. So, as I'm slowly feeling this, I'm increasingly getting worried. That's supposed to be a sad face, y'all, not too much. So, the figure where I drew it this way is because it felt so tall, and I felt like its head was looming over. So this is like my first time ever drawing that sketch out, but basically that's what I felt, and it just felt so creepy, y'all. Like, you know, you feel like something's watching you. My whole skin was crawling, and my eyes just could not leave that corner because I kept feeling like, no, something is there and it's watching me, and it felt so uncomfortable. So I'm like, oh hell no, I can't sleep. So I call out Larry's name, and to my surprise, Larry responds. Now I told y'all Larry don't respond for shit. So if Larry answers me, I'm like, oh shit, okay, let me try my luck. So I'm like, can you sleep? Larry gets up. She sits up in bed and she says, no, I can't sleep. This is when I start being like, okay, Larry's also a spiritual person. Okay, we're Christians, so I'm just like hoping that I don't sound too bizarre to Larry, but I hope that she catches what I'm picking up. So I go, do you just kind of feel a little off? And Larry goes, yes. And I'm like, do you feel like something's like watching? She's like, watching me. Yes, like I can't sleep. And now both of us are freaking out. And then I go, okay. And I go like, and now I calm down, like, so where do you feel it? Do you feel it? And then she points, y'all, this is when my mind started melting. She pointed to the corner of the room, exactly where I felt the presence. So now we're both tweaking. I said, wait, Larry, tell me you're not lying. She's like, I'm not lying. I feel a presence in the corner right there. Y'all, that was the first night I ever slept in Larry's bed, okay? Because Larry, the type she don't like to be too touchy. But that night, we was gonna rub toes if it meant we were gonna be safe in the name of the Lord. So we prayed and we laid our head down to rest and we just crossed our toes with our fingers and we just asked Jesus for guidance. Lord, please help us. And that was how we ended the night. But when I tell you guys that was my craziest first paranormal experience ever, because it's one thing for you to be in your own delusion, it's a whole nother ball game when somebody else validates that and they know what you're talking about. I will never let this story go. To this day, this is still one of the encounters that gives me chills, because I'm like, I was not alone. And I thank God every day that I had a roommate like Larry like that to pray like over us, because I don't know what I would have done without her. I would have lost my mind if it was just me by myself. Okay, so yeah, that was my first story time. I have a bunch of other creepy story times, so let me know if y'all want to hear it. Honestly, don't let me know, because I'm gonna tell you anyways. So, but that's my creepy story time. Yeah.
Ghost story time. A little background. It happened at my grandma's house. Her house is notoriously known for having weird things happen. People there. One point in time, it slashed my grandfather's guitar strings like straight across. So now that you know this, I was probably about 10, 11 when it happened. I believe it was some sort of holiday because me and my brothers were over at my grandma's. I wasn't feeling well, so I decided to take a nap in my grandma's bedroom. My grandma had told me before I took a nap that her and my brothers were going to go in the backyard and do some yard work. And I was like, okay. She said, you could either come out when you wake up or you can just stay in and watch TV, whatever I felt like doing. So I take a nap and I just randomly wake up. I was feeling better. A couple minutes go by and I hear a knock at her bedroom door. And I'm like, come in. And I guess she didn't hear me or something, so she knocks again and I'm like, I'm awake, come in. Comes in and she tells me, she's like, hey, your brothers and I need your help with something in the backyard. Can you come out? And I'm like, I don't know how much help I'm gonna be. What do you need? I'm guessing she didn't hear me because she just turns around and walks away. I even hear the sliding door open and then close again. So after a couple minutes, I get up, I go to the bathroom. And while I'm in the bathroom, I hear a knock at her door again, like she was coming back to make sure I was actually coming out to help them. So I tell her, hey, I'm in the bathroom. I'll be out as soon as I can. I heard her say, okay. I hear her walking down the hallway and I hear the sliding glass door open and close again. I get done in the bathroom and I go to the living room and open the sliding glass door and peek my head out, and she's sitting on the stairs. And I'm like, hey, you said you guys needed help? And she was like, what? I'm like, yeah, you came in there and said that you and my brothers needed help with something. She was like, I haven't gone inside since we've been out here. And she was like, your brothers have? Are you sure it wasn't like one of your brothers who said that? I was like, no, I distinctly remember it being you. And she was like, no, I didn't go in. I'm like, that's weird because I talked to you twice. Like, no, I haven't been inside. My brother said they only went inside to get water. They didn't go to the bathroom. They didn't even go down the hallway at all. Like, okay, this is kind of scary. I'm not kidding when I tell you that I wasn't even half asleep talking to my grandma. Like, I was face to face. I saw her. She was standing by the bed talking to me. And I even heard her voice through the bathroom door. But there's my story time. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about that moment?
One of the scariest things that ever happened to me happened while I was in college at UC Davis. I was working at Abercrombie & Fitch at Arden Fair Mall at the time when I was in college, and I was actually at the mall for a completely different reason other than work one day. My laptop had kind of shit its pants and I went to go take it in, whatever. As I was leaving, this man approached me. And as females, we're kind of used to having men approach us. It's not that big of a deal. You just say, don't bother me, and they're usually on their way. But there was something about this man's presence that had me frozen in fear. I had never, and still to this day, have never experienced anything like that before. I can't remember exactly what he said. It was nothing threatening, nothing super intimidating. I think he was just like, oh, what's your name? Like, why are you here? Something like that. But for some reason, something had just a pit in my stomach just being in this man's presence, and I gunned it into the nearest store by the exit, and I called my dad immediately, and I said, there's a man that has approached me. There's something about him that's not right. I just need you to be on the phone with me until I can get to my car. I get into my car, lock the door, get home, forget all about it. Then 2 weeks later, I am working a shift at Abercrombie on a completely different day, completely different time. This time it's a closing time, and I am leaving the store ready to go home. There's really no one in the mall, and I'm leaving the store, and in the distance I see a man sitting on a bench. When I get close enough to realize who it is, it's too late. He's already making eye contact with me, and it's the same man that gave me that horrible pit in my stomach a few weeks prior. This scared me so badly for a few reasons. One, there was no one there. There was no one in this mall, really, besides like the few employees that were probably still closing up their stores, but there was like literally no one in this mall. It was empty. There's no reason why he should have been sitting there. And it just seemed like he was sitting there waiting for me. And that scared me because how did he know where I worked? How did he know I was going to be there at that time? And why is he sitting here waiting for me? What are his intentions? After this, things get even scarier than I could have imagined. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to do a part 2 and explain that.
We gonna have a little paranormal coffee sip and chit chat because I'm on acres of land in Massachusetts, okay? And if you don't know, Massachusetts is extremely historical, especially where I'm at. And the thing about the acres of land is that it gets a little creepy. It gets a little creepy sometimes, to the point that the owners of this property have named this property, I'm not gonna use the exact name, but I am going to say Pandora's Box. Something close to Pandora's Box, okay? And it always sparked my interest as to why they chose Pandora's Box as like a name. But the more I live here, the more I'm finding out. So one day, I was here smoking a cigar, right? And it was nighttime. The stars out here are absolutely stunning, okay? I've seen so many shooting stars being out here compared to New York where there's so much light pollution. But I noticed that as soon as the clock struck 11, things got weird. And I immediately felt like there was an energy on these acres of land of property that I'm living on. Was like running back and forth. And that's not an energy that I personally want to fuck with. So I say, wrap it up. So I, turn off my cigar and I run inside, quite literally. The next day, I tell my father, hey, I was smoking outside and there was something weird that happened on the property. You know what he tells me? Oh, yeah, on this side, right? I was like, yeah. He was like, yeah, you wouldn't pay, I would not take top dollar. Nobody can pay me top dollar to go on that side of the property after a certain time. As soon as the sun goes down, that's it. I'm not going any further. You couldn't tell me that? I mean, he was like, yeah, but they're not gonna bother you, but just don't do it. Just don't do it. And I'm like, oh, another time, I need to get something from the garage. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this now, okay? Because if I don't do it now, I'm not going to get it done. I have the energy, let's do it. So I'm going ahead, I'm doing it, but the garage has a lot of stuff. And the thing that I needed was all the way in the back. So I needed to figure out how to pull things out, to then pull my item out, to then put things back the way I found it, mind you, and then lock it up and then bring it into the house. Why, all of a sudden, I get this intuitive ping, because it's on the side of the house that is the forbidden, you cannot pay me $1 million to be out there at night. And I'm like, something feels suspicious. Something feels odd. And then I started to notice that the sun is going down. And it's going down quite fast. And I'm like, I gotta wrap it up. I gotta wrap it up. So I'm here frantically I'm like, God, please. Because the vibes was getting more and more and more intense. And with this property in particular, it's not necessarily what you're seeing, but it's what you feel is looking at you that you can't see. That is what's given the spooky ook. And it's after the sun goes down, there's some type of something that happens here where things come out to play, okay? There have been times that I could have sworn, and they're like, oh, we have animals on the property. We have and it's just like, So yesterday I was out, and this was during the day. This is why I'm telling the story, because the property, I guess, is just loving the fact that I'm here. So yesterday I'm out sitting in the sunroom, which is like a little room before you enter the house fully. It's like a mud room, but they decked it out. They have a couch there, so you can sit, you can chill, you can have your coffee out there. And I go and I read out there quite frequently, and it's overlooking said area. And it's been really windy in a lot of different places, but over here in Massachusetts, it's been real windy. And as I'm like monitoring the wind and just kind of enjoying the vibes, all of a sudden, I hear this whisper in my ear. This man whisper in my ear. Mind you, it's only me and my dad at home. My dad is knocked out because I can hear him snoring. So it's not my dad. And there's no one around around our property because, again, we're on acres of land. So who the fuck is that? So I say, you know the words? What is it? Wrap it up. Wrap it up. So we wrap it up. We go inside and we continue to have our coffee. And mind you, this is like at 9 a.m. This is early. The sun is out. What's going on? So my mom comes home from doing whatever errands she was doing. And I tell her my experience. Like, hey, I heard a man whisper in my ear when I was out in the sunroom. And she goes, oh, that's so odd, because the place that I was in, which was like a place where nuns go to sleep, I forgot the name of that place, but where nuns go to sleep, or they rest, their space. She was like, yeah, because I had to be there for a specific thing, and it just so happens to be that nuns also use this building to sleep, whatever. She was like, yeah, and I was walking down the hallway, and I heard a man whisper in my ear, and I thought there was a man there. So I turned around to, like, hi, because we say hi over here. So, hi, and there was nobody there. And then she was like, and then I was like, you know what? I ain't hear that, right? You didn't hear it. You didn't see it. Just go back home, right? So she's like, I ain't hear that right now. So let me just go into the elevator, and let me just leave this building. As she goes into the elevator, she tells me that as soon as the elevator was about to close, it was almost as if somebody put like their hand out and the elevator doors opened again, but there's nobody there. So she was like, and she pressed her button and she got out of there as soon as possible. So all of this, I'm telling you all of this to tell you something spooky is happening in Pandora's box over here. And just prepare, because it's just getting spookier and spookier. Let me know in the comments if you want to see the vibes that I'm talking about, because I'm gonna be up tonight. We got time tonight, and I could record a little snippet of the property if you don't believe me. See you later.
Only a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
All right, I have one. I'm going to start. I'm not like a ghost story believer kind of person. Like, I have to see it to believe it kind of person. But years ago, a bunch of my friends and I went to the Missouri State Penitentiary. We wanted to do the ghost tour. So we went, had a good time, whatever like that. And we're walking through like the buildings, and everybody kept going, oh my God, I feel the heaviness in this room. And I'm like, I don't feel a damn fucking thing. Like, I don't get it. Like, whatever. And so I just was like going along, enjoying it and everything like that. And then we went down to the dungeon. They're like, let's go to the dungeons and stuff like that. So everybody went to the dungeons, and the guys like, go in separate rooms and kind of just spread yourselves out because we're going to turn the lights off. We're going to turn the lights off, and you're going to see how it was back in the days when they were locked down here with nothing for light. And we're like, okay. But he did tell us, he's like, well, that room, people have been touched in that room. And he's like, most of the time it's just people just being people. And so I was like, okay. So I was in a room. I had my friend Nancy, my friend Troy, and 2 people. I have no clue who they were. And so we're standing apart. We can't touch each other and anything. And they turned the lights off. As soon as the lights went off, the room next to us, 2 girls were like, oh my God, I got touched, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, this is cool, but like, it's just a bunch of people yelling about getting touched. And I was like, whatever. So I was standing there like this, just kind of like, all right, how much longer is this going to be kind of thing. And all of a sudden, like, out of nowhere, I felt like my neck, like the hairs on my neck stand up. And I was like, oh my God, like, it's really chilly. So I was like, Troy, stop blowing on me. And he's like, I'm in the corner. I was like, oh, okay, you're not blowing on me. So I was standing here, and then out of nowhere, while I'm standing here, I feel a hand go under my arm, like hand like this. But it was weird because it didn't touch this hand, it just touched my side, and I felt it go down my side. And I was like, oh my God, Troy, what the fuck are you doing? Stop it. He's like, I didn't do anything. I'm in the corner. And so I swing my hands out around to like hit whoever's near me. Nobody's there. So they turn the lights on because the time's up, and I am white. All my hair is standing up and everything like that. And I just looked at my friends and I'm like, I'm gonna leave this room right now. So I'll see you outside. And so I went outside and everything like that. And some lady came up to me and she's like, oh my God, I can feel you got touched, didn't you? And I was like, you're kind of creepy, lady. But I don't know what happened, but whatever. She's like, I can feel it. Like, you got touched or something. And then so the tour guide came over and was like, so what happened? And I was like, well, it had a hand. And he's like, it's kind of weird because, like, you're the second female that's ever happened to. And I was like, wait, what? Like, that was real? Like, no, we're not going to play that game. So, again, I don't believe it unless I see it, but that is my one ghost story, was getting touched in the Missouri State Penitentiary. They do have ghost hunts. We didn't do that. We just went on the ghost tour where they told stories. I do recommend it if you're ever in Missouri. So, hope you have a great day.